Okay. Gotcha.
Hello and welcome to episode 124 of Around the Lens. We're almost at the halfway mark. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Coming with me is my co-host, Zach Roberts. Hello, Zach.
Hello, how goes it?
Good, buddy. How are you doing today?
I'm alive.
All right. Good to know. We've got some... might be making a little road trip in the future. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm working on, I'm sure how many times I've been saying it, working on moving very quickly. Work isn't exactly happening up here in upstate New York, north of Syracuse. Shockingly, the news, world up here isn't breaking. So basically just moving somewhere along probably the I-81 corridor.
Okay. Nice. Yeah, well, good luck with that. You mentioned Charleston. Charleston's a wonderful place, so I'm sure you'll have plenty of fun there if you go down. You can say hi to Stacy Pearsall for us and a bunch of other people who live down there.
Sure.
All right, great. Well, we got a great show for you on tonight. We got returning panelist and podcast host in his own right, Mr. Joe Giordano. Hello, Joe. How are you? Joe, tell the audience.
Man. Thanks for having me back on.
No problem, buddy. Tell our audience a little about yourself, the ones who may not know you.
Well, I'm a professional working photojournalist. I run a podcast called 10 Frames Per Second. I've seen The Exorcist 98 times, and it gets funnier every time I see it. No, sorry, that's Beetlejuice. I apologize. When they asked for his resume, sorry, nerd humor. So I'm also working on a project I think we're going to be talking about today, The Death of American Steel. So I'm pretty psyched about that.
Yeah.
And I just started teaching photography at Baltimore School of the Arts.
Whoa.
I'm teaching photo 101 and with a photojournalism slant. So they've never had a photojournalist in the position. It's always been fine arts, so they're going to test out. So we're going from clouds and memory to opioid addiction and violence. Anyway, but I have a full darkroom, 9 enlargers. We're doing all the developing. It's great. I've been in the darkroom in about 20 years, so I had to have a little primer myself. I got to get in there a few days early and play around, and I'm psyched. And the kids love it. The kids love analog.
Nice. That's amazing that they still have places with darkrooms.
So that's me.
That's neat. So is this your first time teaching, or were you taught before?
Yeah. Well, no, this is my first time teaching. I applied for the job, paper, and the outgoing photo teacher was moving to LA with his partner, so they had an opening. And, it's more along the lines they went by my experience, not so much the resume. And I'm part-time, so I'm not a full-time teacher. And yeah, it's a good fit. The kids photojournalism, they love to a period now. I mean, social awareness. I think there's more real photography there. I have a whole cabinet full of with, and hold on, 9 enlargers. All the chemicals I can handle.
Nice.
So it's cool.
Yeah, just in case any of our audience is wondering why you might be kind of in and out, you're dealing with a little bit of a storm right now, right? In your neck of the woods, there's a storm.
Is there a delay with my mic?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
We're dealing with the satellite feed all the way out in Baltimore.
Yeah, we've got tornadoes. Yeah, it's pretty big. We have a DC just
Okay.
Right.
Well, hopefully.
Sorry.
Hopefully the roof doesn't come off your house.
Calling in, the tornadoes are outside my window. But is my Wi-Fi slow? Is that sorry? I feel like there's like a delay.
A little bit.
All right.
We can work around it though. You might want to turn off your video feed.
That's cool.
To speed things along, but yeah, we invited you on, of course, and you want to talk about your portrait series, your photo series called Steel Death, which is all about the sort of death of the steel industry.
This is not good. Like I can't because I can't hear myself. Is there a
I want to
long
do a restart or
delay
something like
my-
that.
I don't know if I can do that. We are live.
Oh no, I mean, JM, if you do a restart and we can bide for time, if there might be a problem or something. I'm not quite sure.
Joe, if you want to restart, you can come back on, and we'll come get you back on.
Is it working?
Okay, I think Joe's gonna
Yeah.
work that issue out. Let's talk about his photo series Behind His Back before he comes on. So, if you want to see what Joe did, just go to our show notes on aroundthelens.com. Click on the link for episode 124, and you'll see a photo story discussion on Steel Death. Joe?
I think he's gone.
He's still there.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Hey!
I'm back. Is that better?
Hey, he's back.
Is that better?
It is better.
Is that better?
Much
Is
better.
better? Okay.
I can see you, and I can hear
Okay,
you, and hopefully you can hear us.
Okay.
All
Yep.
right.
I can see you guys fine.
Okay, the joys of live.
Okay.
So since you're back, tell us a little bit about your
Yes.
photo series, Steel Death.
Okay. So it's the series is called "All for Thee This Day: The Death of American Steel," and I started it about 13 years ago when I was covering the steel industry in Baltimore, and President Bush initiated the first steel tariffs, and I documented, did a lot of portraits with retirees. I documented like the kind of the mills, more of a Bill Brandt type way, not so much like pouring steel, but more of the kind of fine art, abstract way. And I resurrected it for the new president because he's also initiating steel tariffs, which destroyed the American steel industry, pretty much. And I was in D.C. today shooting Wilbur Ross. He's the Commerce Secretary, and he was basically the guy that ruined about 30,000 retirees' benefits by buying Bethlehem Steel and then kicking to the wayside all the retiree benefits. So it's a long-term project. I have to go to Weirton, West Virginia, and shoot there. I'd like to do some international shooting too, like in the UK and Japan, and like the Czech Republic, like former steel towns, basically. So it's chill. I like it. It's a pretty good series. Been well received. I have a show of the local work at the Museum of Industry coming up next year in 2019. It's a solo exhibition of the work. So I'll send you guys an invite. Come down from New York if you'd like to.
Cool.
Where's that
You
again?
crash here.
That's going to be in
It's cool.
Baltimore?
Yeah, it's going to be here. Yeah, the Museum of Industry here in Baltimore. It's a pretty big museum, and they have a nice they have a new gallery space for artists and photographers, like an actual gallery in the museum. So it's going to be a solo exhibition with a catalog, and it'll possibly traveling to other museums. So it'll be about 40 black and white prints. We're working at the size, probably 15 by 19, something like that. Something manageable. It's not going to be a big, kind of mounted on board show. It's going to be traditional black frames, really nice black and white photos, good prints. So.
Now, you've been shooting this for 13 years, you said?
Yes.
And has it been shot
Yeah,
on
and it was
film or digital or mixed?
Well, I started. I have a few rolls of film, and then I have my very early digital was like the D70, I think. I'd be off on my number, but like 2004 or something like that.
Sounds about right.
They were, and they're originally in color because the mono conversion wasn't really good back then, so I just shot in color. But now I'm converting to how I originally wanted it, which was black and white. And I got to tell, like any photographers that are like have a long-term project, I went back and looked at every single file and re-edited the whole thing after this 13 years, and there was stuff in there I didn't even know was in there, man. It was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Yeah.
It was really great, and it really kind of energized me into keep going with it, and to keep it going. So yeah, any of you guys doing long-term projects, just re-look at your work, go back, and you'll be amazed what you did 10 years ago if you're in that space.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Like, I've looked at stuff from the past, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many gems here that I never thought about the first time I went through this and was doing my initial set of edits. And like, oh wow.
Yeah.
Why did you choose black and white?
Because I tell my students, I think black and white is the language of photojournalism, and these pictures, the colors don't add anything to the photographs. They're not part of the context of the photographs. So I actually had a friend of mine, Matt Roth. He shoots for the New York Times. Come over to my house. We're kind of neighbors, and go over these pictures. And he agreed. He was like, man, he's like, the black and white ones, they're so much stronger because any color kind of takes away from it. And these are just really it's just a dialogue between the subject and the viewer, and that's it. So there's no, you couldn't have an Eggleston in black and white because his color is the part of him, And this particular series, there's nothing in there that the color lends it. I mean, because it's a lot of gray buildings, and it's a lot of terracotta colors and things. It's kind of blah. And I'm not like an Alex Soth type photographer, where I'm not a big fan of what I call blandscapes, right? Where it's just it's horizon building. Yeah. A brown building on the brown horizon with a white lake in front of it. So these render themselves really well in black and white.
Now, how much longer do you think this series you're going to be? Is this forever, or is this do you have an end to this series, or is it just something you'll always come back to?
I don't know. I mean, I'm really interested. I'm not sure. Teaching, doing a little of the freelance that I do on the side for newspapers and stuff is allowing me to kind of keep this. I'm applying for a grant, like I was telling Zach. Mm-hmm. Applying for a pretty substantial grant for it, but I don't know how long it's going to take. I have a map of places I want to go, and I think once that's over, that'll be the end of the project. I think projects, I don't know what it's like for you guys, but there's kind of this esoteric thing where the project will end itself. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I did a series called Killer Angels about the series of death metal portraits. I think we talked about it the last time I was on. But I went to a show, and somebody said, "Hey, are you the photo booth guy?" And that was the end of it. I'm like, I'm done. That's it. Project's over. I haven't taken a portrait because because when I started that project, there wasn't really a thing like a photo booth, right? Where I was taking the white background, pulling people out of the crowd when they were really getting into it, and kind of shooting the emotion of being a metal fan. And then I got a name for going around, and I didn't want to become the portrait guy. I didn't want to become the photo booth guy. And my gut was like, anything else you're going to take after this is not going to be into it. So I just stopped, and the steel, I'm sure it'll be the same way.
You're going to be the steel guy. Hey, it's good old steel guy.
Something about me. How about you guys? What do you guys work?
You can just be the man of steel. I mean, come on. You
gotta. That's why we have you on the show, Zach.
It's weird because, I told Zach,
yeah. Oh, Joe, we're starting to lose you again.
Over here.
Yep, starting to fade, like the steel industry.
It's fake.
Well, that's a good point.
You're Ed McMahon. Yeah, man. That's right.
Joe, do whatever you did before because you're starting to get bad. Zach and I will talk about our film projects or whatever, our projects. Zach, what projects are you working on?
Well, we can talk about Giordano's work. I mean, I highly recommend you go over to jmgiordanophotography.com. Obviously, we'll have the link in the show notes. And Thanks. They're stark, black and white photos. And it's interesting because everything I know about the steel industry basically comes from Bruce Springsteen songs. So immediately I start humming Youngstown and everything like that as I'm looking at your photos, which I think is probably a good thing.
As long as it's not Allentown by Billy Joel, we're good.
No. It'll be very difficult to find me singing Billy Joel songs.
I like everything he's got here. You know, it's a lot of it's a good mix of portraits and just.
I thought you were talking about Billy Joel, not the photo.
Yeah.
I was like, really? Everything? I mean,
you're like bottle of red.
Start the fire. There's a couple Piano Man. Okay, I'll give you, but in the right setting.
I honestly don't know enough about Billy Joel's whole catalog to tell you if there's good or bad in it. I just know the songs that he's famous for.
Yeah.
So, and they all are good to me. I don't know any bad stuff. I don't think he's made a bad song in his life, if you ask me.
That's the pull quote for this episode.
Yes. The Billy Joel episode.
Talking about photography, because this is a photography podcast, filmmaking, visual journalism. Anyways, yeah, it's a great collection of imagery here, showing off, an old steel mill, old stuff, dilapidation, upside down American flag, nice.
How do you, over time, because, I mean, one of the problems I find, especially for projects, I have a bunch of projects that are those never-ending projects that, like, whether it be, politics in Alaska, and they have an idea, like, one day, maybe I'll put together a book or something like that. Right. But how do you decide, because it's really easy for the kind of big moments, whether it's an interview you did or whether it's when you met somebody, but, like, how do you decide when you're putting together, like, say, 40 frames from like so many years of work and so many, God only knows how many, actual original files are sitting on a hard drive somewhere. The ones that are always tough for me is how many, and like, how do you decide what, of the close-ups of the, like, you have there's this one image, which I can't find right at this moment now, of like just random books. And one of them says, 100 things you should know about communism.
Oh yeah. That one.
And but it's interesting because like those, especially when you're just going through on your website, it all builds really well. My portfolio site is not in any way, shape, and form built like that. It's literally basically my dumping ground for backups. Mm-hmm. But like, how do you decide when you're like putting together 40 frames, like how many and what, like, of the close-ups? Because you want to get in a lot of portraits, and you want to get in a lot of wide setting shots, like Bob in the abandoned mill and things like that. But like those macros are really kind of sometimes that builds the scene better than almost anything else. Right.
Well, I mean, it's like kind of like writing a book, right? So you have your different drafts and your beginning, middle, and end, and then you have your scenes in between, and those minutia shots to me are like the glue that kind of holds it together, where it's just not landscape portrait, but there's these little things that it gives you like just a little peek into the world without being too broad. Like I love that. Like you pointed at the communist one I like, and also the one with all the business cards from the Iron Workers Hall. There's a thing with business cards.
Yeah.
And this really kind of shows like this dying world of these of steel, and coal mining gets a lot of press because every president's always promising to bring back the coal mines, but I mean every building in this country was pretty much built by American Steel, and that was like the number one employer at one time. So when this world kind of implodes, it's good to get this minutia. Like I have a shot in there of my grandmother with a little statuette of my grandfather that was made for him as like a gag birthday present in the 70s.
Yeah.
And Matt, who came over, get a good editor, man. Get a friend you really trust that knows the genre. Like he came over and he was like, I love the grandmother shot, but I want to see where that was in context. Where was that statuette being kept in her house? Yeah. And he's right. It's on a bar in the basement, and they all have bars in the basement.
Yeah.
So he's like, put it back, take a photo of it in context with it, because there's all these trophies down there too, right? He's like, put it in with the trophies, man, right where you found it, and then take a picture of that, and do something separate with your grandmother.
My grandfather was I think he was a union welder. I'm trying to remember what it was, and it reminds me because I remember up in his barn, like I only remember him as being retired. Up in his barn, he had his helmet. But it wasn't clearly his helmet that he like wore on a daily basis. It was like, but it wasn't bedazzled like with jewels, but it was like, it was clearly the thing that they gave him when he retired. Like it was a thing, and he had like those things existed in his house, like those weird, like Union I don't like. I know a bunch of IBW guys, and I know a bunch of like guys from other unions, either from Alaska or whatever. Those things don't exist as much more because it's not the union culture isn't as like it's a union town. Like you'd go to the bar, you'd go to the whatever, and it's the union bar. Like everything in that area was either union or owned by the company, and it's so it's interesting, like showing those macros, like the thing of like the box of not medals but steelworkers delegate guest pins or whatever they are with the Pope John Paul the second mixed in there.
They're
cigar box of medals is it titled.
The ribbon, the ribbons.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it builds. If anyone actually has any remembrance of that kind of union time period, especially the 80s. When it was in its last vestige, like this is really thing. Makes me think of the movie Gung Ho so much. Which if you haven't seen, you got to see. But
there's a shot in your series that I'm curious why
Ribbons of Shame. Ribbons of Shame, right?
Yeah.
What's that? Ribbons of Shame? Oh, are you talking about the box of ribbons?
Yeah, no, that's from Gung Ho. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Zach was talking about the box of ribbons. And in Gung Ho, the guy wears ribbons of shame.
Yeah.
That's why he's kicked out of Japan.
I like this shot. I'm wondering why you chose it. Clouds where the mills used to be. It's a shot of a cloud and the landscape. It's just to kind of show the desolation.
That'd be the photo in the series. I took it. I was commissioned by Anna Devere Smith, the actress. She's in a big thing for HBO to do a thing about prison pipeline and the former industrial part of the city. And I just went down there, and if you see an overhead shot of Sparrows Point, it was only second to Pittsburgh. The amount of buildings that were down there, and the L blast furnace, and then there's just nothing, and there was just this like one passing cloud. Where at one time you wouldn't have been able to see that cloud, and it's just like a bomb went off and leveled this landscape. Yeah. And it might be a little cliche to end like that, but that's going to be towards the end of the series.
Yeah. A lot of these photos have very short captions. What was sort of the intent there? As opposed to like maybe giving the viewer more information about what's in the picture. Or I guess I see you have the basic caption or the basic story about the series, but like for instance, you have a picture of a trophy and it says "When we won stuff," or these look more like photo titles versus captions. I'm just curious, what was the sort of why not caption these images or give the story behind the image?
Well, it's an interesting question. So about a month ago, I signed with Redux Pictures in New York. And they're going to market this series. And I had to fill out like captions. Like I had to, because they do AP, so I got to fill out. And then when I was writing the captions, I was like, for a photo book or for a photo series, how much information do you want to feed the viewer? The trophy one is an excellent example because it was just an empty room and someone had left this trophy, and it was an abandoned union hall. And somebody had left this trophy in the union hall. And it's like, that's when we used to win stuff, right? When this trophy was won. And then I didn't touch it. I walked in and it was right there on the table with a bunch of stuff. Nothing you see in the series I've moved around at all. Even the models, there's only a couple where I had them sit or something, but they're pretty candid. Like that very first one, Pete, he was telling me about, he worked for the mill for 40 years. Now think about that. Like one job for 40 years, right? Yeah. Our modern minds cannot even conceive of that. So he stopped talking and he let this sigh out. And I took the photo when he let this sigh out. That very first photo of Pete, right? The portrait with the guy in the corner. It's at the Moose. Has the kind of the smiling 50s guy in the corner. He's got the baseball hat on.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see him?
Yeah,
Joe in his
retired
yard.
vet steel,
Yeah.
1952 to
Yeah,
1996.
really old guy.
Oh.
Yeah, he just like let this sigh out standing in front of. Yeah, do the math on that. That's how long he worked there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane. It's crazy.
That's a bit. That's a bit.
And when Wilbur Ross took over the steel mills, all these guys got screwed. All these guys got screwed.
So he has no pension, or what does that mean? He got screwed. They took his pension away, or what? Or did his cuts? But does it medical care or? Yeah. There we go, Joe.
Yep. Wilbur Ross did. He's a vulture capitalist.
There we go.
So literally, he drops in, buys a company, and basically strips it of all of its wealth, pulls away, pensions and things like that from people, however he can, renegotiates everything, and then basically moves on. And that's how he's gained his. Well, depending on who you talk to, his billions. Because it was recently out that he may not actually be a billionaire. But yeah, I think that was Forbes actually investigated him, which is amusing.
And now he's Commerce Secretary.
Yeah.
So imagine I put this into context, people. So imagine you buy it, you find this great house you want to buy, right? And the owner says, "Oh well, I borrowed $10,000 from my neighbor. I'm going to have to pay him back." And then you say, "Well, look, that's not my loan. That's you.
Yeah.
You take. I'm not taking care of that to buy the house." That's basically what he did with the steel mills. He said, "Look, the retirees are on the Bethlehem Steel Corporation, not me.
Yep.
So I'm going to buy it, and that's it." And these guys had to go on government assistance. If you check my Twitter feed, I think I put a link up, or I could I'll send a link to you just for you guys to read about exactly what ISG did. It's horrible. It's horrible. And then they all voted for Trump again.
Yeah, it's very, very confusing. Especially considering it was a known entity that he was going to pull in all of these guys that basically did actually. But but that's also the that's to me kind of fascinating portion. Whether it be you do stories, whether it be the Michael, Roger and Me. It was fantastic. He's obviously gone by far, but standing alone, this series, any time you talk about whether it be the steel industry, the coal industry, and actually kind of talk to the humans that are affected by it, it adds a whole unbelievably complicated lens to it. Because if you're just a politician outside of it, you're like, how can these people, with the famous book by Thomas Frank, What's the Matter with Kansas? Like, why do Kansans vote for Republicans when every other statistic about particular Kansans says that they should vote Democrat because they're union, because they're this and they're that, but yeah, anyway.
No, you're exactly right, Zach.
So again, this is going to be appearing. You said it was going to be appearing in a show in Baltimore, right? You're planning on the show, and when's that show going to be?
Yeah, May of 2019.
Okay, wow. You said it was going to be 5 by 16 or something like that? 15 by 19?
No, it'll be like 16 by 20 size.
Okay.
Framed. It's a solo exhibition of the work, so they're focusing on the local aspect. I'll have other pieces, but they'll probably be in the catalog. They won't be on the wall. So,
should viewers expect the same imagery they're seeing here on the website if they go to see your stuff, or will there be stuff that you're not publishing online, or do you think there'll be new stuff?
Oh no, I have more that's not online. I mean, I try to keep my website kind of tight.
Okay.
But there'll be definitely more to see. And like I just shot Wilbur Ross today in DC, so I'm still shooting.
Nice. Do you intend to put any more of a narrative with the photographs, or do you think you're just going to keep it the same way, the pictures with the sort of titles?
Well, I've started the project with a labor studies professor who's doing the oral interview, so it'll probably be broken up by some quotes from the actual portraits of steelworkers that are in there. So that'll be a little more. He's still transcribing, so there's nothing on my website yet. But and I'm actually I belong to Visura from my website. They host my website, and I get 3 sites out of them. So my third site, everything all right?
Everything's great.
Did you guys get tear gas? Sorry. Did you guys get tear gas at the same time?
No, I think we just both
like,
had eyes. Yeah.
Okay. Why is this guy still talking? No, so it's we're going to have some excerpts from oral interviews in there. So there will be a little more context and a little more verbiage when the project comes out.
Okay, great. Well, you'll have to definitely come back on and talk to us about how it went. And then, of course, to promote it, before it goes up so people can come out there and go check that out. We got a little bit more time to work on it, but look forward to seeing how the series develops over the next 13 years.
Have you guys seen... yeah, right. You're like, hey, remember me? Have you guys seen Matt Black's work, the Geography of Poverty?
I can't say I have.
Okay, you need to look that up.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to endorse at the end. So.
Nice. Yeah, we were talking about long-term projects, and I can't think of any long-term projects that I've done. Honestly, I mean, I would say my children are probably the biggest long-term project that I'm working on right now in terms of photography. Just documenting their lives growing up. There was a photographer a few years ago who did a documentary, photography series about his daughter, documenting her all through her life growing up, as a kid to an adult. And I thought that was very interesting.
It was in the same bathing suit, right? Wasn't it in the same bathing suit? He had the same bathing suit on her all the way up till she was a woman from an infant. I'm pretty sure.
Jeez.
I don't know. That might be a different series. This one he just did different shots of her life, kind of growing up. But definitely, I want to see that one for science.
Yeah.
Where do I find these websites with women in their bikinis and bathing?
No, it was it wasn't that. Hold on.
For science.
So when Dave, do you think that you'll be finally giving up on this the project you just discussed?
Who says I haven't?
And is your wife
year project?
It is Mother's Day or the day after Mother's Day. So.
The point at which my son says, "Quit taking my picture, Dad." Oh, I hate you.
You're like, no. No, it'll be when college loan paperwork comes in. Be like, I don't know who this child is.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's why we're saving for his college now. We've got his college fund going, so hopefully that's never an issue. Oh, Matt Black. All right, we'll have to do a little digging and find out more about him. But
he's big. He's a Magnum member. He's a Eugene Smith Grant Fellow. He was on CBS Sunday Morning 2 weeks ago. He had a whole Time magazine spread last month. He's big. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
His work is phenomenal.
Nice.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't have any long-term projects that I'm thinking of. I thought about going back. When I was at Syracuse, I did a sort of semester project on a father who was living in the poverty line and trying to raise kids and work at a crappy job and stuff like that. And I've checked up on him every once in a while on Google, and he's interesting character. I thought about going back to him when I went up to Syracuse for a thing, and just checking up, see how he was doing, and kind of doing a follow up. But I didn't, kind of regret that. But not really any major long term projects I've ever dealt with. Zach, how about you?
I mean, mine's just the wide protest movement. I've been covering.
Right.
Covering protests I usually try to delve into them more than just the, just the actual protest itself. Always try to be the first person there and the last person to leave, sort of thing, so that you get, the kind of more intimate moments of, breaking down, the signs and the protest, and things like that, and whether or not that ever. I am working on a book right now. Called Welcome to the Resistance, which has interviews from basically activists of different kinds and a couple journalists, and has photos basically from the first year of the hashtag resistance. Working on that with a graphic designer friend of mine who worked out a really nice cover inspired by Bruce Springsteen's
nice.
one of Bruce Springsteen's albums.
Not Billy Joel?
No, not Billy Joel.
Zach, how long has it been since the Occupy Wall Street movement?
2011. So It's been 7 years now.
I was gonna say, what's the 10 years?
You'll get there, man.
Yeah, no
get
one.
there.
The problem is the 5-year went by. Like the 5-year was like 2 weeks away, and I was like me and a couple other Occupy photographers, for lack of a better name, were like, oh crap, we didn't do anything. Like we didn't have anything prepared. We haven't done anything. But it's fascinating because that one I've put out a lot of feelers on, on like ideas for books and like kind of like doing like a real oral history of Occupy Wall Street. And I can't find a publisher that's interested. And the couple Occupy documentaries, you didn't raise that much money like through crowdfunding and that sort of thing. So I don't know if it's like one of those just everyone's like, okay, we've moved on. Like, can we just forget it or what? But it's been kind of sad considering that was kind of the thing that it didn't make me as a photographer, but it certainly was the final nail in the coffin of me becoming a broke photojournalist, basically, as opposed to something possibly a little more, as opposed to, one of the wealthy journalists that are now investigating, Russia and Trump and that sort of thing. So,
Zach, if you were a photojournalist in the 1%, what would you do?
So photojournalist in the 1%?
Yeah. Let's say you were 1%.
Are there 1%? And a photo. I would, I actually, the funny is like I literally would do the kind of thing that Matt Black with the geography of you can go to geographyofpoverty.com and I have this dream of doing a road trip of basically, which amusingly enough of the original like photo video documentary series I wanted to do was called This Is America. Which if you've seen the video from kind of, God damn it, Donald Glover, you stole my title. But really, no one's seen that video here?
I have, yeah.
Okay. I just didn't ever react. I'm like,
Definitely.
It only has like 200 million views on YouTube. But is basically traveling across the country and kind of documenting the struggles of Americans across the country and kind of like the ties that bind us and that sort of thing, and literally doing what he kind of did at the Matt Black did on the top of his the site here, at least, and I assume it's part of it, like a book image and that sort of thing, which is document the spots along the way that he traveled, because I mean that's something that the number of times I've gone on cross country road trips, and I suppose there's probably like the first time I did one, there is a GPS record, like I have an app that saves somewhere and it has that record of like where I went. But when you travel the country so much and it's just like you take a random snapshot and, I don't have a GPS thing on my camera, so I have no idea where it is unless I also take a snapshot with my cell phone. And even then I personally don't usually keep my GPS on. So it'd be interesting to like be able to do something like that if I had like, unlimited funds, which, hopefully, one day that'll happen.
Indeed. Someday. All right.
As I just,
and if you had unlimited funds, you could probably buy the product that we're going to be talking about here in a second. So, obviously we've got our cell phones that we keep with us at all times, and, we kind of want to use those as our cameras, but of course, they're okay. You can get decent wide shots with them, but, for the most part, they still don't have the capabilities of like a real camera. So there are some camera manufacturers that are coming out with sort of a stopgap, if you will, where essentially Yungnuo is coming out with the YN43, which allows you to essentially clip a micro four thirds camera onto your phone. So instead of having, this typical camera, and then, the lens and stuff like that, like a DSLR or something, it's just basically the lens portion with the sensor, and you clip it onto your phone, and then you use your phone as the viewfinder and the ability to change settings and, capture the picture. So I thought this was pretty neat. I'm a micro four thirds shooter myself. Of course I use the Panasonic GH5, but, I thought this was, kind of a neat sort of stopgap between, having the phone and having this, because I could see myself, sticking this in my like cargo pocket or something, and that way I'm not carrying around like the whole camera bag or the whole additional camera, because that's the whole thing. It's like you have the convenience of having the camera and having the phone and having the imagery right saved to your phone and being able to do whatever you want with it, share it, upload it, whatever. And you have sort of the higher quality that comes with a micro four thirds sensor and interchangeable lenses. And I think it's kind of almost the best of both worlds, and kind of an idea that I've had in my head since sort of the advent of smartphones, which is essentially like sell me a camera body that doesn't have a screen on it, and I can just stick my phone into the back of it and shoot my pictures and control everything from the phone, and then I have it right, all the imagery on my phone. So I think it's an interesting, kind of sort of halfway meet there. I don't know how well it would work in practicality, and I don't think you could really put too large of a lens on it without it having issues holding on to your phone, but I thought it was an interesting product. What do you guys think of this thing? Is this something you would pick up or add to your collection?
No. Go first? No.
That's a straight no from Joe?
Yeah.
No.
Why not, Joe?
Well, I don't know. I don't know. Okay, okay. So how do these? So have you guys ever used the clip-on lenses for your iPhone? How do they work? Do they work? Are they any good?
Basically, it's just it's not a lens. It's just a small piece of glass that like you could used to buy those like cheap quote unquote fisheye lenses you can screw on top of as a filter onto your lenses. Basically, that's all those are. That's all that the lenses are. It doesn't add anything. It actually, especially most of them are really cheap glass, so it actually subtracts, even if you have like an iPhone 10 or whatever specialness, it subtracts a lot away from it. I actually have a couple of them, and they're kind of hilariously useless. But yeah.
See, I wish these guys would stop making gimmicky stuff and put their money into a phone where I can catch motion, I can catch nighttime. Like there's the phone's not ready for this yet. Like the phones need to be perfected more. I mean, one of the things in photojournalism when they fired those photographers from St. Louis was you had these reporters trying to catch a football game on a phone camera, and it was horrible. So why not put your money into that technology? Like make the phone better. I don't need these attachments and stuff to make my phone. I want a good camera in my phone before I put a bunch of stuff on it,
Yeah. See, I actually want the reverse. I want those. I want basically
get a razor.
Most of this tech. No, but I'm saying this tech inside of my fucking camera. Inside of my camera. More with it to just work. Like I obviously, because of the way that cell phone plans exist, it's been this ridiculous problem where it's like, if you have a tablet that has not Wi-Fi but cell phone tech, basically be able to upload there, you have to have like a plan that's attached to, and it's all kind of stupid like that. If eventually that there's just a way that I can use the data from my plan and have this.
Oh no.
Yep. Zach, we lost
Zach. Oh my goodness. All right,
Zach will hopefully
come back to us.
So how are the kids?
Great. You know what I would love? I would love to get a phone that had a interchangeable lens mount on it, where I could stick my micro four third lenses on my phone. If there's something like that ever came out, it had like a micro four third sensor, and it was just I could use it as my daily driver phone, stick like a pancake lens on it during the day, and then when I go out to on vacation, or if I go out somewhere, want to do something interesting, I can just put, take my lenses from my GH5, any micro four thirds lens, screw it on there, and now I've got a fully functional micro four thirds camera. I would buy that thing in a heartbeat, because I'm like you, I want a decent quality camera that is also my phone, and that way it's one less device I have to have. But we're all stuck with these sort of wide angle lenses, or if some cameras have like the secondary lens for zooming in, but
But this is just something else to lug around.
It is, but I mean, it's not a full other camera. It would be just attachment to your, smartphone. So I mean,
but it is a whole other camera. I mean,
hey, you're back.
But look at the size of the thing. It's the size of a 14 millimeter lens, almost. If you take the lens hood off, at least dimension wise. So it's just another camera. I mean, it's basically like it looks like it's probably 2 or 3 times the size of like a GoPro that exists now. So I mean, get a point and shoot camera. Get one of the little Sony RX whatever things that have like the full frame sensor in them or whatever, or even get something like that. And then there you go, have a camera. I mean, this seems like you're carrying a separate thing anyway. You might as well carry around a camera. I mean, you're going to have to carry your lenses around if you want to actually use your lenses. And you're still, just dealing with everything, all the terribleness that goes along with, lugging around stuff. And, so now it has an awkward connection to your cell phone, which probably isn't going to work all the time,
Right.
and so, like, honestly, that's the kind of thing for me where it's just like, never mind it being Micro Four Third, because screw that sensor size. But
Zach,
sorry,
we were talking about
I have
this.
I have to do my dig at Dave anytime, he's confident with his sensor size. It's okay. It's okay.
Hey, you know what? It's not the size of the sensor. It's how you use it.
That's right.
Zach, I was saying, like, my perfect, like, dream phone would be a phone that had a lens mount for Micro Four Thirds lenses and a Micro Four Thirds sensor. So I could just take my Panasonic lenses or any Micro Four Thirds lens and stick it on there. I think that would be the perfect sort of middle ground for me.
There's the whole Moto X system, which I've talked about a bunch, which they have a dock, basically a magnetic dock that attaches to the back of the camera, and it's physically attached. It's not attached through Bluetooth or anything, stupid like that, I don't know. Personally, I have terrible luck with actually connecting my camera to my phone and things like that. But they actually had it. The problem is that it was a Hasselblad back. Digital. It was just a little zoom digital camera. It was about the size of a point and shoot. That if you separated it from your camera, the problem was that the quality of the camera was kind of crappy, and also it was like $300 on top of your cell phone. But you could then attach other things to the back of the camera. But if you had that sort of premise, because it was thick enough, I think that in maybe 5 years or something like that, whether it be a mirrorless back or whether it be something like that, you could actually attach it to your camera, like just magnetically on the back, or attach it to your phone to the back of it. I think that actually be a good way to do it. But I don't know how it would work with an actual shutter of any kind, just tech wise, but who knows? They solve these issues all the time.
I can't seem to find any field photos of this camera or this thing, like any photographs taken. Like, I see pictures of the app and of this guy's very nice ass at the bottom, but what you might also enjoy on the website you gave us. But I don't see any field photos for this thing, which which I'd want to see that before I made any kind of decision.
I think this is more just.
I want to see the raw photos because, well, I mean, I wouldn't put a car out there that no one's driven, right? Here's the new car. You can buy it, but we don't know. We haven't driven it yet.
I tell you
what, we're not sure.
We at Around the Lens will be happy to review the Yungnuo 4.3 if they send it to us.
It is super curious that they did EF lenses, and why not? Why not Panasonic lenses? Why not something that for the Micro Four Third setup? Because if you're talking about size and you're talking about that issue, then at least you can get a tiny, little tiny lens for a Micro Four Thirds, and that at least then doesn't make up for it. But if I'm sticking on my 17 to 35, or I guess it's Canon, so it'd be 16 to 35, I think. You attaching onto it, that's ridiculously huge and awkward too, right? Because you're like holding this thing that's, but like a smaller lens, like you'd find with the Micro Four Thirds cameras, I think that might be more practical. I still think it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, but how I always preface these things. Yay, somebody's actually messing around with technology for this. Because the big three for the most part aren't doing anything when it comes to technology. I mean, the big two of them are just now finding out that people want mirrorless cameras. So it's nice that like the smaller Chinese companies are actually doing something other than just making cheaper versions of Nikon and Canon's lenses and cameras.
Yeah, I mean, if Nikon and Canon aren't If Nikon and Canon aren't careful, they're going to end up like Nokia and the cell phones, right? I mean, eventually there's going to be a breakthrough with mirrorless, right?
Yeah.
And then everyone's going to, photographers are going to go to that because, I told my class, I compare what we're going through now where they were changing from the Graflex cameras to the Leicas, right? These old timers are like, they'll never get rid of the Graflex. These Leicas, they're just for tourists. And you had a young generation of photojournalists that were like, I'm not carrying this Graflex camera around. How can, like, my students, there's no way these 18 to 25-year-olds can afford a $4,000 camera as a photojournalist. And no, they shouldn't. They don't need it anymore, except maybe for like sports and like, Milky Way photos or something where they need the super, super high res and the speed. But all of them have, every single one of my students has mirrorless cameras, and Canon and Nikon are thinking like Nokia. No one's ever going to usurp us. Well, there's going to be a breakthrough pretty soon.
Nikon just announced that they're coming out with a mirrorless.
I bet it sucks.
Next year. Shh, don't. Fingers crossed, please. Please don't suck. Yeah. But it is interesting because I'm kind of shocked that we have not had yet a major award winner. I think we've had runner-ups at this point with cell phone. Like one world press photo, I think either this year or last year was taken by a cell phone. But you think about, especially, you live in Baltimore, and you think about the photos and videos that have been taken by cell phones and how they have changed America just dramatically, more than my photos have, more than your photos have, more than any other. I can't think of any photojournalist working today that has taken a photo with a DSLR that is as effective as the cell phone that took the photo of any number of the police shootings that have happened. And no, I wish that any of my photos could have 10% of the effect of some of the cell phone things, and I caught a beating by a white supremacist beating a black kid that went viral, and it still doesn't have anywhere near the amount of effect as the cell phone videos do. And it's shocking to me that we haven't started kind of recognizing that. And obviously a lot of that, and I know that's probably a lot because it's taken by some random guy. It's not taken by a journalist.
Right.
But it'll be interesting when,
I'm about to blow your whole thing out of the water, but go ahead.
Tyler Hicks, Tyler Hicks is going to be in Kenya next time. He's going to forget his small, what did he? I think he had a mirrorless or something like that, his Pentax or something like that.
He was in a photo store across the street from that mall.
Yeah, but I think all he had was
camera service.
Yeah. But he didn't shoot it with his full DSLR.
He had a mirrorless.
Yeah.
No, that was getting repaired.
Yeah. No, but if he didn't have that, he would have shot it with his cell phone, and he probably won the Pulitzer with it. Because he's a fantastic photographer who knows what he's doing. So anyway.
Right. But I got two words for you.
Yeah.
Devin Allen. Everything Devin Allen shot, he got the cover of Time magazine. His entire book is shot with mirrorless and iPhone, and that's it. He owns no other cameras. Now he's got a little Leica, but he was a Sony guy, and he was just sending.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and he was an amateur photographer when he got the cover of Time magazine.
Yeah. Wow.
So he's one that knows what he's doing, and now he's an Under Armour staff photographer now, does full time.
Nice.
So he's one that knows that. But I think what's going to have to happen is the Pulitzers are going to have to accept it, and once that barrier, once that the mirrorless walkers will come over the wall. Once the Pulitzer falls, that'll be it. Really, because I went to this. I'm a member of the National Press Club, and I went to this panel discussion with Pulitzer jurors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's still insular. It's still AP, Washington. Like you're never in until they open that up to take cell phones, to take people that aren't professionals, then it's not going to be acknowledged. I mean, there's a million iPhone contests, right? And I mean, Sony Photo Awards, there's probably some iPhone stuff in there, right?
Yeah.
But until the big organizations, I love it. I love a lot of these, or hear this gear podcast. Everyone's like, well, Micro Four Thirds is it, and your cell phone's it. Go to a multi-$1,000 fashion shoot. With a Micro Four Thirds of your phone and watch them tear your contract up in your face. Like,
what, fashion show? I figure they would want people to use their phones.
No, like a shoot, a
red carpet
shoot, like a professional photo shoot.
I'm sure somebody.
Like a studio, a studio fashion shoot. Yeah, but you have to be high enough up the chain, up the food chain for someone to go, oh, well, they can do that, but you can't, Mr. Catalog Shooter. It's just not there yet.
Yeah.
And you can't shoot sports on mirrorless.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
Can?
or even, they've started with the new Sony, the A9. I think a handful of people are. I mean, one of the problems is the variety of lenses just aren't there enough, when it comes to at least comes to Sony. But which I'm sure some Sony person will argue with me about that. But I mean, even when it comes to, just not even talking about the tech, it comes down to you look at the awards, and when's the last time someone other than a newspaper and I've said this a million times on it, a newspaper that's been around for years and years and years, or the website version of a former newspaper has won any of these big awards, and it's extraordinarily rare.
There's a reason for that, though. There's a reason for that, especially with the Pulitzers.
Yeah.
And that's because they're inundated. This is a great panel discussion. If they come back, man, I'll send you an invite a month in advance. It was a really good panel to sit on, or to sit and watch. It's these little guys, me, you, that we don't have the money, so New York Times will send in 100 photos, and this is why they always win. AP sends in 200 pictures from the whole year. It's crazy, and the little guy just doesn't have the wherewithal or the means to get in there. And also, I'm going to vent for a second. I had coffee with an AP, the local AP guy here in Baltimore. He does the East Coast, and I didn't know this, but the Getty photos of the Freddie Gray uprising that won were converted to black and white for the Pulitzers. They originally ran in color, and then they converted them to black and white for the Pulitzers, which pissed me off, and Pat's pissed off too. But there's nothing that says you can't do it. Anyway, I'm done with that rant. Anyway.
Oh, great. We got another ranter.
The technology is just not there yet. So to bring it all in, no.
Well,
I wouldn't buy this. I just don't think it's worth it. I haven't seen any photos. So,
All right, well, look for one of these under your Christmas tree this year, Joe. You're going to shoot your next Sealed Death series
Thanks, guys.
right now.
Thanks.
Thanks. If we get one to review, I will tell you, audience, we will let you know
do you
how
know,
good it is or bad it is.
Do you know what's the price point on these? Did you look into that at all?
I did not see that on there listed,
I don't think
I'm sure we'll find out soon enough.
Yeah,
because I bet you can just buy them.
Yeah.
I bet you can just buy a Micro Four Thirds camera, buy the real thing, buy the attachment.
And the thing is, there are other companies that do this type. The Olympus has one, Sony has one, Vivitar has one.
Those are all one lens, though. They're not mounts for lenses that you have. The Sony one isn't, at least. It's just a one lens. I don't know the Olympus one in particular.
The Olympus Air is the same thing. It allows you to mount whatever lens you want on there. But anyways, we'll get one of these and we'll talk about it on the show in the future. We'll do a review on it. But you mentioned something about technology. So let's talk about technology a little bit, specifically AI technology. Artificial intelligence is becoming the new big thing nowadays. It's very much in vogue this year. If anyone saw the Google I/O sort of presentation about, essentially you can have your phone make phone calls and make appointments for you. I think that's great. As soon as the AI expands to the point where I can just have it do my job, that'd be great. But what we're talking about specifically here is how AI is apparently able to essentially salvage very low light, high ISO imagery, essentially using a reference photo or something like that. But it's able to kind of take these images that would normally be too noisy to use and turning them into recently, decent shots that are perfectly adequate. And I'm just curious, obviously, what do you think of this as a technology? But what do you think of AI in general? Obviously, we have cameras that are able to judge our exposure and our aperture and our ISO and all that stuff. But I mean, at what point does AI become so good or so intrusive in the camera system that it's not photojournalism anymore? Is there a point where, if your camera is able to sort of say, look at the scene and create the best, exposure or the best settings for you, is that still photojournalism? Is that unethical to essentially have an AI assist, help you take your photos? Joe, what do you think? Or Zach, what do you think?
It's interesting because it walks such a fine line of just whether it is like just more technology. Like, I mean, the fact that, I can take now a photo of this room, which isn't lit that well, and, 15 years ago with a digital camera, and this would just be not a completely useless photo. You couldn't really see anything. The ISO would be just be so useless. But now I can take one with my D750 and my 35mm 1.4, and it looks like it's daylight. But this is kind of a step. I don't know. It's a step too far. It's kind of like that. What was that device that? The Arsenal, yes, where it quote unquote learns how to take a good photo of the scene, or good generic nature photos, and then does it for you. Then I kind of feel like that sort of device. It's just, I think, as I said when we talked about it originally, what's the point? Like, why don't you just hook up a security camera, and like call it your photo and take a screenshot, But that's but these are all kind of questions I think we're going to have to talk more and more and more, because right now AP, a lot of the stories that you see on the Associated Press are actually written by quote unquote robots. They take little bits of information and then compile a story together, that's 350 words or whatever that it has to be, and then puts it out. So we're losing the journalist end on the print side so much, because it is relatively easy to put out a story that has just the information that you need out without actually having, a human being other than to input the who, what, where, when, and why, and then done. And you don't need a journalist to do that for the most part. But it'll be, I'm torn on whether or not this is something too far. I personally would never use it in my work, but possibly, if it was something that needed to be, like the kind of the story that needed to be documented in the photo was just too low, and I needed to basically NCIS it or whatever those shows are, enhance. And
well, I think you especially would have a use out of this because you shoot a lot of low light stuff without flash, because you're shooting like protests at night. So I mean, I think anybody would have the most use out of something like that.
I mean, isn't this just Noise Ninja? Right? Isn't this just cleaning up? Like, do you guys remember Noise Ninja?
Yeah,
the plugin for Photoshop.
I think this is. I mean, what I'm feeling is that this is also color correction.
You're not changing any. You're not changing anything in the photo. In other words, you're not telling it to take the photo for you. You're just cleaning it up. And I'm not a big fan of this kind of technology. I don't think is bad. I mean, again, it's going to come down to gatekeepers, World Press, and the agencies that accept this or don't accept it. If they reject it, then more people aren't going to use it. But this, like, I mean, just looking at it, it's just like, some kind of pixel cleanup that I did with Noise Ninja like 10, 15 years ago. I mean, to a better degree, of course, but it's not taking the photo at night and making it daytime, right? It's not monkeying with like the horizon or anything like that. It's just getting rid of all this noise, and I kind of don't think that's manipulation, in my opinion. I don't think that's a bad thing. It's not taking wires out or anything, taking the poles out. It's just getting rid of the noise that's there.
Yeah.
And I know for archive purposes, archivists will love this. When they have when they have an early digital photo, they can use this to clean it up,
It's interesting because in the abstract of the paper, which the article I don't think describes this, and the abstract doesn't really, and I'm not paying for the article, so sorry.
What?
Sorry, but it says the network operates directly on raw sensor data and replaces much of the traditional imaging processing pipeline, which tends to perform poorly on such data. What is the I could be an idiot here. If there's anybody listening and can understand it or whatever, traditional imaging processing pipeline, is that just literally the camera's output and then the normal way you'd edit it through Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever, or is this something more? But to me, I get a little Isaac Asimov-y on my uncomfortableness, or maybe it's not Asimov, but uncomfortable on my idea when they start talking about artificial intelligence, adding it into picture technology and things like that. But that's possibly just me.
I mean, well, it's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
I would just be curious, what about AI at the core camera level? I'm saying, like, where it's built into the camera, and you're essentially shooting, you can shoot photos and turn on this AI assist setting, and now it's like it's choosing your settings for you. I mean, obviously that sounds like program mode essentially, but where it's not just looking at the general sort of exposure of the scene, but it's looking at what, it's actually able to interpret what you're taking a picture of. I mean, we're seeing this already in phones, like the, I think it's Huawei P20 or something like that. It has an AI, capability built into the camera, into the phone, and it's, it's able to determine if you're shooting like plants or food or animals or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you think there's any ethical sort of dilemma in that instance, or whether you think that's just as, just like any sort of other auto setting that is used to assist sort of the, I guess, casual photographer.
Well, I mean, you had, like you just mentioned, I mean, you had the program mode, which most, real photojournalists back in the day would scoff at. They would never use the A or the P, right. On their cameras, because they want to do it all manually. So, 20, 25 years ago, there were three guys at a bar arguing the same thing with program, I don't let my students use it. Right. Because I want them to learn aperture and I want them to learn shutter speed. So this, I mean, just this particular software, I don't have a problem with. I have a problem with creating photos from nothing from AI. That takes out the role of the photographer. I mean, I'm totally against that. But when it comes to things like noise cleanup and stuff, I mean, to me that's a benevolent use of this, kind of technology. Again, it's not like saying, well, I want to take out all the street lights. I'm looking at the street light photo. It's just cleaning up. It's doing a job. It's cleaning up all these things. And again, before I had this like pepper papadom I choked on, I was saying that my wife's an archivist, and I mean, there's going to be a time where our JPEGs are going to look like this deteriorated photo in the bottom. And wouldn't you want the technology to be there to clean up those photos?
Yeah.
See, so I definitely agree with you on the archivist and that sort of thing. My only problem is, and I've gotten into huge arguments with my former photo professors and things like that. Back when I was shooting color film on color correction, and this is something I've had a lot of problems with. You're shooting late at night, and now cameras can shoot in the hundreds of thousands of ISOs, and you're getting almost a different color spectrum out of the camera when you're editing, and you're looking at it, and then I guess it comes down to on how much you personally will correct it to what you're remembering. My rule of thumb has always been I try to at least correct it slightly to what I remember the scene being. Mm-hmm. Beyond, without it getting, obviously, some photos, if I have to go too far, if I spend too much time on it, 9 times out of 10, unless it's something incredibly important, I throw the photo out. Like, I just don't use it. And my problem with this is that that's taking that decision out of your hand. And this is, if you're just a photographer or just a random, mom taking photos on the cell phone, which, like, this is where I see this tech being, like, great, cool, on your cell phone, like, where you don't really care and you just want a good photo in the, at late at night or your soccer game or whatever, when it's, terrible, especially as more and more phone cameras start shooting raw. But in photojournalism, this is deciding the color spectrum for you. And, a lot of it looks right, based on just what I can see. But I mean, like, I'm looking at one photo here. If you go to the paper on Illinois' EDU website, which you got to follow the links through, they have sliders where you can actually slide back and forth and see what it is through the traditional Adobe output, like if you're going to use Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever, and what it is through theirs. and I'm looking at one photo, and it gets almost all the other colors right, but like this thing looks like an orange to me, and it color corrects it to a lemon.
But isn't that already?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
But isn't that already happening with like the clarity slider? Like, aren't we fucking with the colors anyway when we use like clarity because it works in the shadows? Like, I was just looking at these prom photos from the other night from school, and the local photographer, newspaper guy, he just went to town, and it changed because he changed the shadows.
Yeah. Using
this clarity filter. The people were orange, right? And dresses were different colors, and they're already doing that with like the things in there. I mean, I just, this particular bit of AI seems to me okay to use. It's great for when you're going to have eventually 30, 40-year-old JPEGs that are going to need to be cleaned up, and you're going to use this. Now, I'm with Zach on going too far and changing like the color of the leaves and like, the lighting and things like that. But I mean, you can already change your white balance, right? You change your white balance, you're going to change the lighting in the photos. Yeah. The people already change their white balance in Photoshop anyway, depending on how they want it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of already there. But this, I think this is great. I mean, I would use it in 15, 20 years when my JPEGs are deteriorated. Well,
I mean, that's why you should shoot from RAW, but
always shoot RAW, folks. Always
keep your RAWs. Keep your RAWs.
Discussion for another day.
Question. Yeah. What if you can't open your RAW files?
I know
because someone takes over Adobe, or what happens with that?
I don't want to think about the nightmare.
They've all kind of agreed on JPEG.
Yeah. No, I mean that.
What do you think of this? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, I agree with you. I think that is. I out of all of this, again, with like any of these technology moves, it's like the fact that we need to be constant. I don't think that the photojournalism community talks about these things as much. We allow other people to talk about it. We allow the higher echelon of editors and things like that to kind of have the discussion, and then maybe we, go nuts on the comic boards. But I don't think that like normal conversations, and maybe I don't hang out with enough photojournalists, I don't know, but like we don't talk about this enough, and I think that we need to be continually talking about it so that there's a general, whether we can find a general consensus on whether or not this is okay or not. And before we even get to the point where somebody gets the photo, it goes to the world press and wins, and then everybody loses their mind because this is a thing that we never really had the adult conversation about. And again, I never took a photojournalism class in my life. I never went to school. So it could be, hopefully this conversation is being had at Newhouse, at, Mizzou and all these places. I really hope it is. But I always kind of doubt because based on what I always hear,
I doubt it.
I would bet that our that it's happening down in Georgia, but with our previous guests that we had. But I don't know if it's happening as wide as it needs to be. Because I don't see a lot of photojournalism schooling based on talking to photojournalists really changing that much from film.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, really problematic.
Right. Well, I mean, I think, but to bookend what you're saying, and I don't have a degree either. I took photo 1 and 2, and then I went off on my own. But I think not enough people are taking photojournalism classes, Zach. This is the problem, is that there's a lot of exceptions to the rule. Like you're one of them. But look at the kid that put the Marianne Mark photo in the brothel photo.
Yeah.
That kid thought that he was totally in the right. You know what I'm talking about?
The problem is that he had editors. He had editors all along.
They're not being taught.
Hold on, you guys are talking over each other.
This is wrong.
Sorry, go ahead, Zach.
Sorry.
No. I agree with you, but the problem is again, he had editors that allowed him to go all along. You have these relatively famous, the fact that Steve, you still think about Steve McCurry, like, how isn't the collective stop? How isn't there a collective no? You're now not. We don't even talk. We had arguments continue. I mean, how many episodes did we talk about that? I mean,
more
dear
than a year
Lord,
ago.
When it came out, I mean, it was so many episodes.
Yeah.
And we had people on. We were going, no, he's a real. Discussions where like, no, he's a real photojournalist. And I go,
well, we had
no,
people
he's
on
not.
who wouldn't talk bad about him. Like
Yeah.
I wanted to discuss the topic, and then people are like, no, I got too much respect for Steve McCurry. I can't talk bad about him.
Yeah,
So I'm like,
all the time.
Okay.
And any time that one of these things happen where some respected photojournalist or, who's won awards, who's been, accepted into the high echelon of, untouchables.
They're men.
And that's too far, but, too far. But, we can't have the discussion about what they did wrong because it's something that, Steve McCurry did or, whoever named the other photographer that gets into trouble did.
Yeah.
And you mean like you mean like a guy saying the Kappa wasn't there in Normandy?
Yeah, I mean,
pretty soon we'll be all out of a job.
It's the legend.
We'll be replaced
the
by
legend,
robots that can shoot perfect photos in every setting.
We will.
And
drones flying.
Well, think about this. Let me ask you guys a question. Why do we need sports photographers when you can have a robot go up and down the sidelines snapping millions of pictures to get that one image that you need on the front page? Why do we need, it could realistically already happen if they really wanted it to happen.
Yeah. I
Exactly.
mean, yeah,
you can't.
They're shooting.
Just open that box. It will happen now.
Just gave somebody
an idea.
At ESPN an idea. Not that they actually have photographers, I don't think anymore, but they're already shooting soccer, football games, European football, whatever, soccer games in 8K.
Yeah.
And they've already discussion where it's like you basically need to have like 2 cameras, like because you can just cut in, and you can pull frames, from that, and they're, some of them are just as good as anything else. And yeah, no, I mean that. I would, it's terrifying, but that conversation's being had.
It's a perfectly valid idea, and I haven't thought about it until you said it. But yeah, you could set up a couple cameras on the sidelines on both ends, and a couple cameras on the edges and stuff. And I don't see why you couldn't train AI to shoot at peak moments of action at any sporting event. It's all in a controlled, well-lit environment. I mean, really, it's like, hey, capture peak action, Show them enough examples of good quality, high quality sports photos, and I'm sure any AI could figure it out.
You combine that with what's the name of the camera that shoots depth? It shoots like 3 frames. You combine that with like 8K and doing, oh my God, I mean, because then you can decide, because I mean the one thing that photojournalists, whether it be sports or whatever, they make the decisions of basically what's in focus and what's not, and what's sharp, what's, from what angle and things like that. And once you can make that in post, I mean, obviously I think you probably still have to have, God forbid this nightmare scenario happen. But you still have to have an editor somewhere. But then to me, I go,
eventually, but I'm sure AI editors will come around.
Thankfully, computing technology still stays expensive, more expensive than the day rate of your standard photojournalist.
But you don't even need an editor. I mean, think about this. You could program a computer to look at the algorithm for contact only. So you type in, we want pick out contact only. So every time a receiver hits a tackle, that photo is pulled out.
Yeah.
Right, and goes right into a paper program. I mean, it's gonna. But I think and I tell this to students: the future of photography is personal projects that editors want to see. That's unique, right? They want to see something they can sell or something that you're working on that AI could never do that. AI could never do occupy.
Yeah.
It's the mechanical part of photography.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, I think that's going to end our today's show. Joe, you wanted to highlight a photographer you mentioned earlier. Why don't you go and highlight them again?
Yeah, his name's Matt Black. He's fantastic. He's doing a ingenious series called The Geography of Poverty, where he's picking the poorest towns in America and just taking, 1 or 2 photos there and moving on to the next town. You can follow it. He has an interactive map, I think, on his website of the towns, things like that. And his work is fantastic. He's a Magnum associate. He just had a huge Time Magazine issue like 2 months ago, and he's a Eugene Smith fellow. Great stuff, just great stuff. And he's Matt Black, all one word, on Instagram, and he was Times Instagram Photographer of the Year for 2 years. So.
Nice. Well, you are an Around the Lens associate and an Around the Lens fellow,
yes.
Joe. So you can put that on
Thank
your
you.
resume.
Where's my mug?
Nothing.
In the mail. In the mail.
Nice.
It'll get there eventually, as soon as I make the mug and mail it to you. Yeah. But thank you again so much, Joe. Please, everybody, go ahead and listen to his podcast, 10 Frames Per Second. You can find it on your podcatcher of choice or iTunes. I just actually subscribed to it right now as we were having you on the show, because I remember last time we talked, it wasn't on iTunes.
Yes.
So I'm glad it is
Yes,
now.
it is now.
So I'm looking forward to seeing how you expand. I'm going to listen to your episode on the denier, the
Kappa denier.
Kappa denier. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many more interesting shows and episodes. Zach, is there anything you want to throw out there before we close out?
I'm trying to remember whether this came out. I finally have my my latest piece from the NRA convention over at nationofchange.org. Please be sure to check that out, because I actually got some. I didn't think I got that many good photos, and then I finally did my full wide edit, and I was like, oh, dear Lord, I got a bunch of kind of terrifying images from that, including a newborn baby, basically with a sniper's rifle, a 50 cal.
Nice.
Fantastic.
You can't start them young enough. You know what I'm saying?
It's true. It's true.
Well, if you like listening to me and Zach talk about things, we're going to have a little post-show discussion where we're going to talk about the film Kodachrome, which is on Netflix. So
was it good?
It's all right. It's okay. You'll have to listen to the review discussion for the full details, but we're going to do that right after this show. If you're on Facebook Live, you can just hang out on Facebook and we'll pop it up there in a minute. And if not, you can listen to the episode. It'll be on Around the Lens under our Around the Lens reviews subheader. So go check that out. We're going to talk about the film here in a minute. I want to thank Joe so much for taking time out to be on the show. Appreciate your time, Joe.
Thanks, man. Always.
You're always welcome back. Talk about any other projects that are going on. So we'll look forward to hearing how this develops or any other projects you work on. Again, I am Zach Roberts. I'm not Zach Roberts.
Stealing my identity.
For Zach Roberts, I am David J. Murphy. This has been Around the Lens, episode 124, and we are out.